From our studios in Olympia, Washington, TCTV presents South Sound Seniors, news and views featuring the people, places, and events that impact our growing senior community here in the South Sound region. Our program is presented as a community service to inform and involve you and yours in the lives of older adults. Your host for South Sound Seniors is the Executive Director of Senior Services for South Sound, Eileen Mackenzie Sullivan.
Welcome to South Sound Seniors, a program for and about older adults in our community. I'm really excited to be here tonight. We've got some really important information and we've got some really fun information. Lots of things going on as we kind of kick summer off in the month of June here. But before we get going with the important information for you, I really want to thank the folks up here at TCTV, because without them, the crew, the volunteers, the staff here at TCTV, we wouldn't be able to get this important and fun information out to you. So hats off to TCTV. We really appreciate them. Well, Senior Action Network is a wonderful group here in our community, and over the last few months and over the last year, we've partnered with them to bring some very important information. And tonight I have two SAN members, Bruce Bamford and Clair Ferris. Welcome.
Welcome. Hi there.
We are going to be talking kind of about pre-planning for the end of life. So whether that's long-term care and when you're going to maybe need some help to stay in your own home or to do what you want to do. I'm going to talk to Bruce about that.
Yep.
And then we're going to do some talking about pre-planning for that real end of life. And so that will be helping the person who is dying, possibly being really relieved about that. Won't be a worry on their mind. And really, most importantly, their family members, their survivors. We'll be talking to Claire about that. Right?
You bet.
First of all, I'm going to ask both of you to chime in here. Why do we not do this? Why do we always do that denial thing? Or we just don't think we're ever going to die or that we might ever need long-term care? Why don't we do it?
I think when it comes to the death question, people just don't like to talk about it. You know, it's the finality of it, and it's difficult to discuss. Mm-hmm. And but when they do, they find that they can make things a lot easier.
Yeah.
But it is difficult to talk about this. There's no doubt about it.
How about you, Bruce? Why don't people want to talk about?
I think most people don't realize until their parent goes into a nursing home or a facility, and then all of a sudden the lights come on of we thought our medical insurance or health insurance or something would pay for this,
that,
and then they find out that the government doesn't have a program to help us with long-term care. And then the people start looking at the planning of what's going to happen to our assets and things.
So for long-term care, it's more like, oh, well, somebody's going to take care of it until they hit the wall and realize that, not necessarily, yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm really glad you're here, and hopefully we'll inspire some people to get out of the denial cycle and maybe make a decision to do some pre-planning.
We hope so.
We hope so.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
let's start with you first, Bruce, in terms of long-term care and what people really need to know and decisions that should be thought about now before they need long-term care.
Okay. Well, when I started years ago with long-term care, it was you learn insurance, but because of Senior Action Network, and we have so many people in our group from all entities, from in-home care to everything, pretty soon you start learning where the insurance goes to place out in that whole arena to help people. And then you start gathering more education on what it is, and Medicaid and Medicare and all the programs available. And so you hopefully learn a lot, but the Senior Action Group has taught me a lot of what all these entities are.
Okay, so what would you say to somebody that's just starting to think, where do I go from here? What do I do first?
Very first thing is you have to get a power of attorney. I think everybody, I've learned so much on Medicaid planning, and you can't move assets, transfer assets, that everybody needs to have a power of attorney. You need to have somebody who's going to make a decision for you if you can't make that decision tomorrow. And so getting your wills done and power of attorney and a good elder law attorney is the number one thing people need to do before they do any of the planning.
Okay, so say somebody now, okay, they've got their power of attorney, they've got their will, Now, where do they go from there?
They want to know about, as far as studying long-term care itself. This is one of the best books that I have ever come across. It's done by Sheba. It's long-term care options. But what's really neat with the book, when the government does it, there's no advertising, there's no insurance company paraphernalia, nothing else in there. So they just walk, you can sit down with mom and dad, sit down with a book, and it walks you through, the family through long-term care, what is it, but it makes the whole family think as an entity of what are we all going to do for mom if she gets dementia? Is she going to move in with one of us kids, or, you know, at what point do we have to put her into a facility? But it walks, they did such a great job with that book, all the resources available, that if, you know, people pick that up, they'll learn a ton.
So that's actually a really good second step after their will and everything is in place, and just really to educate themselves, especially on something that's a neutral party.
Neutral party is the main one.
And so one of those from Sheba. And how does somebody get a hold of something like that?
They would call it the Sheba number, which I have put on my little list here of the 8 things a person needs to do, which is 800-562-6900.
Okay.
Is to get the book. They used to give me, I could get a 200 cases or 200 books at a shot, but because of the state budget cutbacks now, everybody has to call and order their own book. I cannot get cases of these anymore. The other one that I really like is the long-term care insurance workbook they have.
Okay.
So it walks people through, if they want to look at long-term care insurance as a product, then what do they look at? So you don't have salespeople trying to work with you. I'm really an advocate for the government does a good job with these 2 books.
Okay, well, good. So say somebody's now digested those long-term care options, then they need to kind of look at what long-term care insurance would do for them if they think that might be a way to go, an option. What else do you tell people in that list of 8 important things?
Well, how are you going to pay for it? I mean, it's not that you have to buy insurance or anything else, because you may have $10 million in the bank and maybe your investments will do it. But the reality, when the nursing homes are $8,000 a month, I always tell people, how many $8,000 a month checks can you write out of your checkbook until you go impoverished? And if you have insurance, that may be the cure. And if you have a lot of money, that may be the cure. But if you have $20,000 in savings, well, you're going to write a couple checks, and then you're going to be on the Medicaid system, which is our system for being impoverished. And then you're going to have limited options. Medicaid's a good system. Thank God we have it.
Right.
You know, but you're going to lose a lot of options of where can you go, what facilities will take you.
Some places just don't take people with Medicaid.
Yeah, so my main with the planning cycle is just people need to walk themselves through, if this does happen to me, mom, dad, you know, what are we going to do with you? And I'll tell you some of the cases that I've got recently, because I do a fair amount of Medicaid planning also, understanding the rules with the elder attorneys. Some of the stuff I've got recently is just devastating, you know, to the family of we're going to lose everything. Well, the government puts a 5-year look back on gifting assets. So it's not like you're going to be able to give everything away to your kids, because the government's already put all the things in place, so you can't give things away. You will privately pay.
Right, that's a spend down piece where people spend down to the point where they get to the point where they need Medicaid.
And why people don't do more pre-planning of it? Back to your first question.
Denial. They don't
Denial,
think about it.
you know, a lot of denial. Maybe fear of being sold something they don't need. I don't know.
Right.
You know, just most people have never been into this place yet, so they haven't come to that point yet.
So people could do some reading about the long-term care insurance options that are available for them. They could go and talk to different insurance people that maybe they know. And then they can also talk to somebody that represents many different insurance. Okay, well, hold those thoughts for a minute. We may come back to you for a second. But Claire, another, as we were saying, another denial. People don't really want to talk about the end or really admit that they aren't going to be around. But I can imagine some pre-planning about your death and how you want things to go for you relieves the person in the long run, if they finally get out of denial, if they do some planning.
Absolutely. In fact, I'd like to piggyback on some of the things that Bruce is saying. Some of the issues that we have today are people finding themselves living longer and longer, hence the need for long-term care. Also, they have a tendency to outlive their resources. And so when that comes, then the responsibilities of dealing with the end-of-life issue, death, it falls upon the survivors. So it's a very difficult situation. But a lot of this can be solved very easily. And the state of Washington has been an advocate in that regard for people that want to make decisions ahead of time. They've passed some laws that have indicated that or allowed people like you and I to make our own decisions and to be empowered, so to speak, with the opportunity to provide for our own disposition. And that's without interference from other people. So the way that that can be done is for an individual to go to their funeral home of choice and sit down with a funeral director there and discuss what they want to do in advance. Now they can do this without intimidation, because the Federal Trade Commission has provided a way for that to happen. Every funeral home in the United States is required to provide a general price list for the consuming public. So anybody can go into any funeral home, and I recommend that they go into more than one and get information and gather it and bring it home and study it. They have pricing information, they get a feel for the people they're talking about, they find out who it is that they want to work with. And then after they've got that figured out, they can sit down with the funeral home of their choice, and they can write down all the things that they want to have done, decide what those things are ahead of time. They can make an arrangement to pay for those things in advance while they have the income and the resources to do it. Now, by doing that, by contracting with a funeral home of choice, the funeral home is then obligated to perform under contract. So when the time comes, the funeral home will provide that service that individual wants without retribution, because they're obligated, and the people that make the prearrangement are assured that they're going to get what they want.
Right.
And that's critical, because otherwise you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know what kind of burden you're going to leave to other people to have to deal with.
Right.
So you want to avoid that wherever you can.
Yeah.
Take advantage of these laws, take advantage of sorting out through the issues and deciding and talking to one another if you have a spouse, making sure that they understand what it is that you want accomplished.
Yeah. Well, I imagine just like the education piece of long-term care, there's a big education piece to planning a funeral for somebody. It's like, I'm sure there's all kinds of things, the obvious, are you going to be cremated? Are you going to have, your body buried? What are the other options, and all the questions about that? But I'm sure there's just a lot of choices and a lot of things to be educated about.
Oh, there's a huge amount of options, obviously. But you'll find that everybody has their own opinion. Now, some people may want something just very basic and simple, and they want the minimum disposition that may be a cremation with no formal service. And somebody else may want or need to have some type of memorial or celebration of life. This may be an important aspect in sharing that life story with the community. And so everybody has their own needs and has their own desires, but those things need to be discussed. A funeral director, a good funeral director, should sit down and give you information, gently walk you through the process, and then give options and ideas that can help to save money. And so this is your opportunity in advance to save money by making sound decisions. Because when that death happens unexpectedly, or no arrangements have been made, then you have some emotional decisions that pop up. And sometimes they're not the wisest, and they can really be costly mistakes made.
Yeah. And really, as you said earlier, if you do shop around or talk, get educated, you will also get that relationship thing going, see who you click with, I would imagine.
Exactly.
Because I think that's a really important time to be working with someone you feel you can trust.
Exactly. You want to be very comfortable with the people that you're working with. I want to make a comment about people that want to prepay funerals.
Sure.
There's a reason for doing that, and obviously there's an advantage for doing it. You buy at today's cost. You make your decisions without any pressure or emotions involved. And the state requires that all monies that are paid for funeral plans in advance be placed in a third-party vendor or arrangement, so that no money is in the pocket or the coffers of the funeral home. That way, if something happened to the funeral home,
Right.
then
They retire, go out of business, whatever.
right, those funds are still available, to be used any time in the future. So the state has got good control over this situation for the sake of the consumer.
Right.
I went into Clair and I had him pre-plan my funeral, 56 years old, actually probably about 54 when I went in there. It is very fascinating with the questions he comes up with that you don't think about, but it's all part of pre-planning.
Yeah.
But I feel so comfortable that it's done. It's in my little financial notebook, and what I want will happen. It's not what anybody else wants.
Right. Right.
Bruce is more organized than most people out there. He's got a book of everything that is involved with your life.
It's about.
The book of life. Bruce's life, anyway.
Yeah.
But it's really important to go over these things. You can't believe the number of things that you're confronted with. The vital statistics that are going to be required to file a death certificate. The decisions of where you want to go, whether it's cemetery, scattering if you're going to do cremation, or placement in a cemetery, a veteran's cemetery, or whatever it is going to be. If you want traditional burial versus cremation, it's all these decisions have to be made.
Right.
And you can give the best gift to your family by doing this in advance.
Yeah.
It is a gift.
Yeah. I truly believe that. My dad had everything done, even his own obituary written out. It was a blessing. It really was.
Mine's half done.
Yeah.
Well, who knows you better than you?
Exactly.
And
He
what the
knew
things
he wanted to have mentioned
Sure,
that
exactly.
were important to him.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, very definitely. So,
Yeah.
well, it's a wonderful service. I do have one question that also might come up. If, does a funeral director, is he able to help serve anybody of any religious background, or, what different faiths have different requirements, I know, for their funerals?
He should be. He should be absolutely attuned to what the needs of that individual is. He has to listen, he or she has to listen to what those needs are, and then develop that plan around that either religious or individual belief basis might be.
Yeah. Okay.
On the pre-planning, what Claire walks through is a lot of the same things that I listen to of when mom's going to go into a facility of some type, and then all of a sudden all the children are arguing of, I'm taking mom home with me, I'm taking her back east with me, she's going to go in a facility here.
Right.
Because they never sat and talked about what happens if.
Right. Yeah. So it's good for family harmony, peace of mind and family harmony.
It is.
So, yeah.
Well, when we both know in the work that we do that there's a lot of issues